All right, so not a lot of people are talking about this. I wouldn't say this is breaking news, but we are in the middle of an ongoing investigation with PIONER. Do you guys remember PIONER? It was that Stalker meets like Tarkov and Chernobyl MMO FPS that released at the end of last year. It dropped in early access. I made a video on it. I wasn't a fan of the first several hours of the game. There was so much like really shittily written dialogue. The onboarding for the game was so fucking boring. You had to play for hours on end to get really like going in the game. It was not fun at all. This is a game that I was really excited about for the last several years on this channel, and when it dropped into early access, it felt like a completely different experience than what they were selling in any of the trailers, and there is a lot of shit coming out about the internals at the studio and more. This is an insane story, and I'm very surprised nobody's talking about it. So there's a lot of different articles coming out from this IXBT Games, who have been doing an internal investigation at GFA Games. This came out on April 16th. Recent news of delayed salaries at GFA Games has just been the tip of the iceberg. The development of PIONER began in around 2017, 2018. Now listen to this. This is when the project was still called Reborn. When the employees that are there now apparently joined the team, in front of them was what they called Scorched Earth, on which a previous team managed to eat the money of an unnamed private investor. After this, a new group of developers took over the initiative, and PIONER itself was relaunched in 2021 under the wing of GFA Games, under the new leadership of Alexander Nikitin. So there was two different games being developed throughout this process. One from, 2017 to 2021. Those developers did something with the investment money. They blew it, or fucking, I don't know what happened to it. And then they restarted development in 2021, which I didn't know. That's actually insane. As we know, the early access release did indeed take place on December 16th. However, as this article points out, it was plagued by delays, glitches, black screens, crashes, and update issues. It quickly became clear that one of Russia's most anticipated long-running projects was being released in an unacceptably rough state, even by early access standards. Vindication, ladies and gentlemen. Meanwhile, monetization gradually became more aggressive as they were working to fix the game. In February of 2026, the game introduced a premium subscription with bonuses directly impacting gameplay. However, according to one of our sources, the subscription itself was originally conceived without in-game advantages until at some point they suddenly decided to increase its value for players. Now, I wonder why they would need to do that. Well, it's probably because they have a shit ton of money problems. When the media began reporting salary delays at GFA Games, talk of a failed release and the studio's possible financial problems grew even louder. So, conversations with studio employees and management quickly revealed that the root of the crisis lay even deeper in the very development culture that had developed within the project and directly shaped how the game was made. Even after PIONER had trailers, public promises, and a clear marketing image, GFA Games still lacked a stable system capable of delivering decisions without endless backtracking, conflicts, and manual oversight. Everything hinged on a fundamental question, one that hadn't been answered within the studio for years: what exactly PIONER was supposed to be. According to this article, apparently at various times, Fallout, Genshin Impact, Destiny, and other projects were cited as a reference point, but a single coherent vision of the development vector never emerged. Quests were repeatedly reworked from single player to co-op and back again. Some mechanics appeared, disappeared, and then returned in modified forms. According to rank and file employees, the game design department never had a roadmap, never had proper sprints, and the game designers themselves often felt less like system creators than content assemblers. For a game this massive, it requires so much planning and in-depth organization. You can feel it when you play the game, just how off it was. In one-sided case, a team would receive a task and begin collecting content, but just as the work was approaching finalization, a new order would arrive from above, turning everything around. In other cases, departments would learn about new mechanics, updates, and announcements after the fact, sometimes simultaneously with players. Holy fuck. How? How does that happen? The team even learned about the game's release through Rostelecom Games relatively late, about a month or a month and a half before the release. And if you guys don't understand what that is, this is one of the biggest sour points for the Russian side of this community. In November, the early access release date was finally announced. However, users in Russia and Belarus simultaneously learned that they would not be able to purchase PIONER on Steam, as the developers had entered into an exclusive agreement with Rostelecom Games for these countries. So they built up a wish list base of over 500,000, both in Russia, Belarus, and obviously in the West. And then they turned their back on their own Russian audience by entering in an agreement that kept them off of Steam. It's the equivalent of a studio going into an Epic Games exclusivity after building wish list numbers on Steam for years on end. But what's crazy is, as all of this work is piling up, it resulted in a shit ton of overtime. And according to employees, crunch was just common practice on the project, and compensation was paid inconsistently. In at least one department, overtime was supposed to be paid with hours recorded. However, the labor code procedure was not followed, and employees never received compensation for these hours. Moreover, the studio's rationale for overtime was often explained simply. If people were working overtime, it meant they simply couldn't do everything right the first time, and therefore it was their problem. Jesus. All of these complaints were apparently mentioned in a collective letter prepared by employees in 2024. It was given to Alexander Nikitin, who is the CEO. In it, they complained about long hours, the lack of a clear roadmap, constant last-minute edits, and broken development processes, but the letter was actually never sent. People there just simply believed that such an approach, handing him a letter with all of their complaints, wouldn't change anything. So this is a crazy one. When testers were submitting not only bug reports, but comments about certain decision-making, these complaints were often ignored. The response, as interviewees recall, was, "You're not here to evaluate the game's art. That's none of your business." As a result, some issues remained low priority for years and simply went unaddressed. A telling example is lip syncing, which had been a long-standing and frequent complaint from testers, but nobody addressed it, and apparently other departments suffered similarly to this as well. After the departure of the narrative designers, which definitely explains why the fuck this story was so ass, Petrov effectively became one of the main suppliers of texts and ideas. The localization department was forced not only to translate materials, but also to polish them, as the texts arrived raw and unsuitable for publication. At first, Petrov allowed them to refine them, but over time, such attempts just became irritating, and a new unspoken pipeline emerged, requiring all text to be additionally approved by the game's design department, even though the game design department itself didn't care. Communication became more complex once again, and the quality of the materials didn't improve. One employee described the text in the game as sad, which I would agree with wholeheartedly.
You have nothing to lose. Be happy about that.
Be happy about that. I feel like I'm losing my fucking mind, man. Be happy about that.
Now that you have proven yourself, you'll have full access to the services of the initiative.
Get me out of this room. Open the door. Thank you, good sir.
Once again, third,
Yeah, that is a lot of information.
A representative of the trade union has sent you a... Well, my guess is the initiative encouraged... And that's not all.
Yeah, what else?
Semyon has sent you a message by mail.
Okay.
I have no idea. It probably means... That's it, comrade.
I feel like I'm in there too long and I'm skipping everything, man. Like, what are we doing, dude? Now, what's crazy is that letter in 2024 that wasn't sent to Nikitin describes a very bleak working environment for the employees, including public humiliation, discussion of offending employees in other people's channels, and completely absurd restrictions, including a ban on sending approving emojis to colleagues from related departments. And according to the sources at the studio, HR played a special role in this system. Instead of easing tension and resolving conflicts, it often became an additional tool of pressure on the employees, which, I mean, honestly, if you're in any sort of working environment in 2026, you can understand how that works very easily. HR isn't there to protect you as an employee. It's there to protect the business. One developer recalls how HR asked leads to stop the flow of questions from the team. According to sources, Petrov himself also regularly referred complaints against employees to HR, including those based on formal or trumped up grounds. Now, what's crazy is Petrov himself acknowledged some of the complaints related to the poor communication between departments in his comment to the editors at IXBT who wrote this article and is doing this investigation. Including issues with pipelines and content review, he believes the anger and discord were more of a result of heavy workloads and responsibilities than an ideological battle. That's still a bad fucking thing, dude. So there's growing tensions amidst the studio in 2024, 2023, 2022. Things are not going well, but then that takes us to recently where the financial troubles are now at a head. Now, the salary delays were reported in April of 2026, but they've been happening at the studio since even before the early access release. Conversations with the editor revealed that the first serious delays began in November of 2025, about a month and a half before the game's launch on Steam. Employees were told about problems with money transfers, currency controls, international payments, and the difficulties relating to Serbia, where the studio's headquarters are all located. The stories would all change, but at the end of the day, the money would just never show up. And when those delays dragged on, the employees actually exercised their right to suspend work under Article 142 of the Russian Labor Code. And that pattern would begin to repeat itself over the next few months, leading to where we're at now. Management again announced the next payment date, employees would wait, but then the money wouldn't arrive. After this, some employees would then file new complaints under the labor code, and the very next day, according to their accounts, everyone who had exercised that right lost access to corporate emails, the bug tracker, the Git, the builds, and other internal tools. The studio just said, fuck you. No formal direct wording about punishment was given, but I mean, you know, you can kind of take the hint. Those who remained on the company's payroll but lost access to all their work tools found themselves in a strange limbo. They weren't resigning, they weren't receiving pay, they couldn't work normally, and they had no idea how this situation would formally or legally end for them. And this is all very recent shit. And if you want to talk about the HR pressure here, listen to this. During a discussion about non-payment, employees are effectively offered not a solution to the problem, but the opportunity to resign. When employees directly state they don't want to change jobs, but would rather receive, you know, the money they earned for making the fucking game, they're told something like, you don't understand what kind of country we live in. What? Various scenarios would happen where some would receive their pay like several weeks after they were let go. Some didn't receive the full amounts. Still, others were stuck with late fees. And judging by the stories they have here, there's no consistent patterns. Everybody was just kind of just like, oh, here, we'll throw some money here. We'll throw some money there. Fuck, you know, you don't get nothing. Fuck you. All right, I'll give some to him. Like, it was a shit show. And it gets even worse because in conversations with the staff at this website, employees said that the studio's Russian legal entity had either already lost its IT accreditation status or they were about to lose it. And at the time of writing this article, GFA Games LLC, which had been used to employ employees in Russia, is indeed no longer listed in the accredited IT companies list. And what this means is employees were able to take out what they call IT mortgages based on the premise that they worked for an accredited company. But after losing that status, they found themselves in a situation where, along with salary arrears, so like the fact you're not getting paid, you also risk losing your preferential loan terms. So some of the developers at the studio, I mean, it's gone from like, hey, I'm not getting paid to I have debts, unpaid bills, disrupted plans, potentially losing out on mortgages, which then brings us to the 21st. GFA Games had their bank accounts frozen in Russia. Their accounts in two banks, Alpha Bank and Raiffeisen Bank, have been temporarily suspended. It is reported that GFA Games owes over 13 million rubles in total to the government for taxes that they never paid. Now, 13 million rubles sounds like a lot, and don't get me wrong, it is. It's about 175,000 USD in taxes. And with the player base not really doing what I think these guys expected this game to do, I mean, they're sitting at about 1,000 players, which for an MMO, you know, isn't really that great. Steam chart says that they sold about, you know, anywhere between 42 to 90,000 units, which probably isn't enough to make back the development costs that they spent over the last several years working on this game. But while all of this is going on, we're also given a roadmap for the rest of the year, which, I mean, look, I'm not gonna lie to you, After seeing the High Guard roadmap, I really don't give a shit about this at all. This is a game that I was really excited about for years on end, but you can clearly see that there was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that we just didn't know about. And that's unfortunate because I think this game had a lot of potential when we first started talking about it, when we first saw the trailers. Granted, from the sounds of it, it sounds like, allegedly, those trailers didn't really have the full vision, you know, and they were still working through what this game was going to be. So that fucking sucks. According to them, we're going to be getting new raid updates, new items, a clan rework that's happening later on in the year. I don't know if this is all going to happen or not. I have no fucking idea. If their accounts have got frozen, they're working on borrowed time. And I want to mention all the stuff here that we talked about, from the employees reaching out to these different news articles, app to top, IXBT. All of this is alleged. This is the employee viewpoint of what's going on at the studio. The developers or the head developers have different opinions. It's all a shit show internally. As always, I want to know what you guys think down below. Do you care? Are you surprised? Did you get a chance to play PIONER? Let me know your thoughts down below. Let's have a conversation. And while you're down there, leave a like on the video and subscribe for everything Big Fry related so you never miss a video. As always, my name is Big Fry, and I'll see you on the next one.